All right, cool. Everybody can hear me? We're good, okay. Well, welcome. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I hope you guys enjoy this presentation and all the crazy treasure that I've been able to pull out of the Grand River, all pretty much since 2020. So as you can see there, I've been born, raised in Grand Rapids. I'm almost 40, so I've been here my whole life. I'm a scuba diver, magnet fisher. I do pyrotechnician work. So I do fireworks for East Grand Rapids during the 4th of July. I just did the Tulip Time fireworks. We do white caps, and then Saugatuck fire. We got fireworks all over Michigan. So I do that during the season, so that's starting to ramp up. Yeah, so anyway, I'm going to share with you guys today about a lot of the finds, the history that I've been able to find on these, and yeah, we'll just go from there. So if you have any questions during, I mean, it's okay if you ask, that's fine. If it just comes off the top of your head and you just want to ask, that's okay. Just raise your hand, I'll pay attention. Okay, so we're going to talk about magnet fishing and the history of magnet fishing. So it dates back to 300 BC. The Chinese used magnets to fish for lost weapons and tools. Miners used magnet fishing for generations to locate deposits of iron ore in rivers and streams. Magnet fishing is a global hobby and part of many industries. So back in 2020, well, we'll go a little bit before that. I was an avid kayaker for many years, and then I would see a lot of stuff in the water, in the river, and I would think, how can I get that out without jumping in the water? And then during 2020, I was off for COVID and had to fill that gap, and so I ended up discovering magnet fishing. And then from magnet fishing, it led to, well, this is cool that we're getting the items out, but there's items down there that we can't get with a magnet, and things that are just too heavy to see. So I said, how can I get down there? So then that led into scuba diving. I got my license for that, and now I scuba dive the Grand River quite often to find this treasure. So what is magnet fishing? Basically, that is where you take these massive magnets, and I have a display here that I set up of some of them as well. So we have multiple different kinds of magnets, but these are specifically made for magnet fishing. And what you would do is attach them to a rope, carabiner, you throw it in the water, and then you just drag it back, and whatever ferrous metal is in there sticks to it, and you see what treasure you got. That's pretty much it for that. So, but there's several different kinds of magnets, and then we also use hooks and stuff. I'll go over that here in a minute, but as you can see, that 6th Street Bridge there in the background, that's a very popular spot because it has so much history underneath of it. But here's some magnets there that I have. These are Kratos magnets, they're called. There's all different versions, Brute magnets and different things like that, other companies that make them. But this was one that I really like after trying a lot of them. These are good quality magnets. But these magnets here are called clamp magnets. And this is the 3 that they offer based on strength. So your first one there is a 1400, so that's rated to pick up 1,400 pounds worth of clean steel. So that would be this magnet here. I can't lift 1,400 pounds, but sometimes it does get caught on stuff, and we have to use different ways of getting that off. That's the one that I say is best for kids, actually, because it does come off stuff pretty easy if it's too heavy. The middle one is rated for 2,400 pounds, and then your big one here, which is rated for 3,600 pounds. And that one I usually hardly don't throw because it weighs 9 pounds in itself, and I actually have it right here. This one that I kind of attach some stuff that I'll be fighting to get off later. So we'll go over the different kinds of magnets. So this one here, I took a screenshot from their website to go over this, and then a lot of people ask the prices of what they are, and this is actually a current price. And so, yeah, they can get pretty expensive. It's on sale, yeah, from $350 to $329. So, but this is what's called a 360 magnet. So this one is magnetic all the way around all sides. And this one here is rated for 4,850 pounds. These are basically considered the professional best magnets that you can get. So if you get real serious in the magnet fishing, this is the thing that you want. because a lot of people that I come across downtown when I'm magnet fishing and they ask about it, they say, wow, you know, they have this little magnet that they bought off Amazon, or they went to Harbor Freight or Home Depot and bought a magnet, and they get mad because they're not catching anything well. Well, those aren't really designed for magnet fishing. It's kind of different. So these ones are much stronger and designed for it, and then they start getting more interested. When they get one of these, then they start actually getting stuff. Instead of like just one nail, they get a bunch, and they get all, you know, you get excited. This one here is a single-sided, so this would just be your standard, what you would do with a single-sided magnet, and I have a couple versions. I got one here. This one here is rated for 2,000 pounds. This is another one, and that's another one there. And those are good for just dropping, bobbing up and down from a bridge. You don't ever want to toss them. Yeah, we got a question over here. Yeah, yep.
Well, I got two questions. First of all, you got glass, so obviously you didn't get that with a magnet.
That's correct. I did that with the scuba diving.
But I saw it on YouTube where guys are fishing out safes. They were taking safes out of the water. How in the world is that possible?
Yes.
It looked like fake to me.
No, it's not. To date, I've pulled out 5 safes out of the water. One of them we think weighs around 250 pounds. And it took a lot of us to get that out of the water. But unfortunately, most safes are in there because they've already been broken into, and then they just want to get rid of the evidence. It's very rare to find a safe that actually has content still left in it that's in the river. It's always just destroyed. Yeah, I know. It does happen, and sometimes on those videos, you kind of got to feel out whether or not it's real or not. But yes, I have found saves. Those are too heavy to bring and try and show off, but I have a couple at home that my wife is like, get rid of them. So back to this. This is just mainly one of your versions for bobbing up and down. You don't want to toss it because it really won't pick anything up. And then this here is called a double-sided magnet. So this is magnetic on the top and the bottom. And this one here is basically good for throwing out and dragging back, and it'll catch things whether it flips up and down or not. And this one's rated for 4,600. They have them all the way down to 50 pounds. So, you know, this is just kind of the high extreme end of these. And then this is the new magnet to town. This here is basically a block. This one's rated for 6,000 pounds. This one is the heaviest rated magnet on the market right now, and there's a lot of companies that are now starting to pick this up, because with this one, the interesting thing is the magnet block itself is one whole piece, and it's completely sealed in this metal container, whereas a lot of this stuff, the magnet's kind of open, and so you can crack magnets, chip them, they start to fall apart after so long of so many uses. This one here will last a very long time, and it's extremely powerful. So as you can see, it's $300 right now, and they won't put it on sale because it's just a new thing. But that's the top of the line exciting one now. I don't have one yet. And then this was just an interesting picture that I wanted to throw in there. This is downtown, right by, I call it Bridge Street, Michigan Street. And this is one of the times that I went out during the winter, because I'll still magnet fishing in the wintertime. I've magnet fished in blizzards. It doesn't matter the weather. I like to magnet fish. And you can kind of see on there how the ice after so long forms. And it's kind of tough because it becomes slippery. But once you get these ice balls forming, then they become like you can grip. But yeah, so your ropes can really get hard. And if you go to throw it, it'll just be one solid piece. Just fun. It kind of looks funny. So that was just an interesting picture that I wanted to throw in there. And then the tools that we use for magnet fishing, we use 5-gallon buckets. Some people use the dollies, as I have here a dolly there just for a display. We use boat-like poles that extend out so that we can reach certain items or reach the magnet if it gets stuck on like the bottom of the bridge or whatnot. And then if we ever get stuck on an item that's too big, like a car or something that you can't actually pick up and your magnet's really stuck, we'll use one of these come-alongs or hook it to my truck or our vehicles and yank them free. And then everyone that does magnet fishing seriously has a cart kind of similar to this. That's what we use to carry all of our stuff around and anything that we find. So that's really popular among everyone. You want to stay with plastic. You don't want a metal cart. I tried that at first, and it is a hassle. It's no fun. So I've switched to plastic. And that goes for anything. Carabiners, you want aluminum carabiners, not metal ones. Of course, I do have metal ones too, but aluminums, they're not magnetic, so it's not a big deal. So that's a lot of that. This is an image of actually recent, just about a month ago. One of my friends gave me a call and said, hey, I'm stuck on something underneath 6th Street Bridge, and for the past 3 years we've been moving this big piece of what we thought was metal. No one could get it. It's too heavy underneath 6th Street. I've dove under there to try and find what this is. I can't find it. This is ultimately what it ended up being, and this is why I couldn't find it, because it kind of blended in with the surface. It's just a big piece of slag from the refineries that we had along the Grand River. There's a lot of these big chunks that were just kind of thrown in the water. But she was stuck on it pretty good. And so we had to retrieve it. So here I am using 2 come-alongs to try and just slowly get it to the top. And then I had to use my truck and connect it to it with that hook and pull it up. Ultimately, I got it in the back of my truck. We broke 2 of her ropes while attempting to get this out. And I brought it to work. We have a big industrial scale, and I weighed it, and it weighed 200 pounds. So I brought it in, scrapped it out, got $20. So and that was 3 hours of work just trying to get it out of the water. But so that's the things that you run into a lot if you're magnet fishing. Sometimes you'll just get caught on something, you don't know what it is, and you need a hand to try and get it out. So the magnet fishing community around here is really tight-knit, and we all have each other's numbers, and if anything happens, since I scuba dive now, everybody that knows me is like, hey, my magnet got stuck, I lost it, I cut the rope, can you find it? Can you come over here and get it in the springtime or fall when you dive in the water? So I find a lot of magnets when I'm in the water, but I'll recover anybody's magnet if they lose it. Okay, why Grand Rapids for magnet fishing? Well, Grand Rapids has an amazing amount of history. Became a village in 1838 and a city in 1850, with the railroad industry starting in 1854. Furniture city developing in the 19th century. This means lots of iron materials used in the development of the city. We also have 16 bridges that span the Grand River, including some historical bridges that are still there. This is a really cool photo that I was able to find that has a lot of the bridges there. Mostly I magnet fish and scuba dive here and here, and then I'll scuba dive a lot in this area here too. During the logging days, they would bring a lot of logs down, and then they would shore them up over here. So there's a lot of logging tools up in this area, and then you'll find a lot of other historical items all along here, the Blue Walking Bridge and Fulton Street Bridge. And then you got, I believe this one's the Gillette Bridge. And so, yeah, it's just full of amazing history here. I got the dates that I was able to find on some of them. I still haven't been able to find the age of Ann Street Bridge. And some of these are kind of like newer dates because some of the bridges were destroyed from back when we had the log jam that came down the river and destroyed. So some of them have been built multiple times. So we'll get into 6th Street here. This bridge was built in 1886. It's the longest and oldest metal truss bridge in Michigan. It's on the Michigan State Historical Site, listed on the National Registry of Historical Places. This is a friend of mine here, Venture to Low. His name's Cal, and his daughter's in the front. We do a lot of, we go out together. He says, hey, I'm going out in the boat, and then I'll jump in my scuba gear, and I'll hang onto his boat, and he'll tow me around to different areas and stuff. So we do a lot of teamwork cleanup. This photo is pretty cool. That was taken in the morning a couple years ago when we volunteered for cleanup for the Mayor's Grand River cleanup. effort. So I do that every year now, and I'm the only one basically in the water besides him cleaning up all kinds of debris, whatever we can get out of the water. This is a really cool undated photo of 6th Street Bridge, just to show just how long it's been around and the history that bridge has seen. We got here, it's over here in the corner there, but I zoomed in. You can see a horse carriage there going across the bridge. I got this one off the library. It had no information as far as they couldn't figure out the timing or not. I'm sure they could eventually with how old, the buildings, a lot of people know. So, but I want to say that might be a steamboat up there. I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, it's just an interesting photo that I wanted to share. And then, so history found under near 6th Street Bridge. So we'll go over a few of these things that I've found. Your question about safes, that right there is a picture of me with a safe that we were pulling up from underneath 6th Street Bridge. There has been around 10 safes pulled out from underneath 6th Street Bridge in various spots. I've only found 2 of them, and that's one of them. We actually thought that was like a big industrial air conditioner at first. And then after looking at it a little more underwater, I figured out it was a safe, and so we were able to pull that out. I'll go over the bowling balls underneath 6th Street Bridge. This is an old carriage we think dates back to 1880s. You can see that out there. This is like a little lockbox that I found that has a ton of IDs and different things like that, credit cards in it from that date back in the 70s or 80s, early 80s. And then this here is a 6-cylinder block, part of an engine that we found underneath 6th Street there. So me and my buddy Ryan there pulled that up. It took 3 of us to get it out in several hours. So, and then this up here I found when diving, kind of buried underneath some rubble, and I seen it, and as soon as I seen it, you can hear me in the video because I bring a camera down with me and I start screaming underwater, because it's vintage coins, and I really thought it was real, but it's really just a paperweight. So it actually dates from the 70s. So I was I thought it was real coins and I was rich, but no. So that was exciting. So here's the 1880s car. If any of you guys might have a clue, I've done so much research. I've looked at thousands of photos in our archives at the library, many hours. I've talked to many historians down here, and we just can't figure out the date of this cart or any photos that have it in the background. I've looked at furniture industry, the construction industry, the railroad industry, all those photos from the early days, and we just cannot locate any photos of a cart that is just like that from back in that day. So if you have any information, that'd be great. But the day that I found this under the water, I was kind of blown away. I didn't believe, that I did find it underneath 6th Street. And so I got a lot of friends together. I got 10 friends of mine, and then another friend of mine that dives came out. And so we all made a team effort to get this out. I had messaged everyone and sent them a little snippet of video of me finding it just to get everyone's interest. And they were just like, this is amazing. We want to be part of getting this out of the river. And so I was able to get everyone together one day, and we just teamworked and got it out. That's the same day that we got the safe out, and then we got some other items out of there. You had a question?
Yeah. That the cart looks a little bit like something that could have been used on the railroad. Was that a possibility?
Yeah, we've looked at that. I mean, there's many options. It could have been furniture industry, something for carrying railroad, like either equipment or luggage, and then also possibly like when they did a lot of brick buildings, possibly carrying a lot of bricks and things like that. So we're not 100% sure. We've looked into it, just can't figure it out. You had a question?
Well, I thought it came out of furniture.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so he says maybe it came out of the furniture industry, which is definitely possible. It still had some of the original wood on there when we pulled it out. But yeah, everything else that we find on, as far as little wagons, they're different. The wheels are different place, they're different sizes, but we have yet to locate one with the exact same wheel base as this one. So the same day, we pulled out an old Bell's phone manhole cover. That's about 200 pounds. I still have that in the yard. I actually plan on making that into a table. And so, but then we also got a road sign as well. We pulled that all out same day. This is just a picture of the big items that we pulled out that day. There was a lot of little items that, other people had taken with them, but I take all the big items. This was old for like filling up your tires or whatever. This would be on the side of the building. That was an old service, air service thing there. That's the safe there. And then you got the wagon back here, old wheelchair, old radio, the manhole cover. So pretty heavy load on that trailer, probably more than what it was rated for. Yeah, so, and then bowling balls. So interesting story about bowling balls. There are a lot of bowling balls underneath 6th Street Bridge. You would really be shocked at, when I first dove down there, I go, what is going on? It's like a graveyard of bowling balls. And it's all all the bowling balls are on the east side of the bridge. There's none on the west side, none in the middle. It's just like they decided to dump them all right there. And so one day when I was magnet fishing, and I didn't say anything to this person at all about scuba diving or any of that stuff about bowling balls, but he came, older gentleman, and he says, oh, what are you doing? And I explained to him magnet fishing and all this and how it works. And he says, back in my days, back in the 40s, me and my buddies, when we would bowl in the league, and they said it was at Wangers, they would bowl, and they were done with the season, they would take their bowling balls, bring them to the 6th Street Bridge, and throw them in the water. That's before I even brought up the bowling ball. It just random came out of the guy's mouth, and I said, oh my God, that's where all the bowling balls are from. And he goes, oh yeah, if you see a bunch of them down there, all of us take them and just throw them all in the water. We're done with them, and then get a new one for the new season. Okay. Yeah, so that's where they all came from. So they came from Wangers, and I just have a little history here on Wangers, if you guys are familiar with that. It was originally built as an apartments in 1910, then purchased by L. Wanger in 1920s, opened as Wanger's Bowling Alley in 1932, and it's still operating, so it's the oldest operating bowling alley in Grand Rapids. So it's really cool just to know that these bowling balls came from there, And then we have here another friend of mine. She magnet fishes, and she ended up pulling up a spittoon. There's only 2 that I know of, and this is one of them. I have right over here. Here's the spittoon that's in the pictures here. I ended up cleaning it up and whatnot. But this is the one that she pulled up from underneath 6th Street Bridge. This one is cast iron. They made them in different materials. And so based on that one and the markings underneath, we believe it came off of a railroad cart. So it's probably one that was inside of like a passenger railroad cart, But yeah, so they're typically made of brass, copper, iron, ceramic materials, placed in pubs, brothels, hotels, stores, banks, railway carriages, courtrooms, and even the U.S. Congress, which is, I don't know, it just seems weird, It's a container for spitting into, especially for users of chewing and dipping tobacco, common in the late 19th and early 20th century. During my research on trying to find a photo of one in our local archives, it was very hard to find a photo of a spittoon somewhere in these pictures. So after looking at hundreds of photos, I was able to find this photo from 1931. It's the City Social Services Store workroom. And as you can see in there, which it's down here, but I zoomed in, there's a spittoon sitting right there. So, yeah, I believe this is the only one that I was able to find that's associated locally that has a spittoon in the photo. So, did you have a question? Oh, okay. And then another piece of history, this one's really fascinating and exciting, that was found from underneath 6th Street Bridge, is this 1913 Michigan license plate. So I have that right here in person. A buddy of mine, Ryan, he found that, and he's donated it to me because I was able to find all the information on it. And so I says, you know, I found a bunch. You can see some out there too in the cases. We all have tons of porcelain plates from 1913, 1914. There's some 1911 ones too that we have in our collections. But I said there's got to be a way to find who these were registered to, what vehicle they were on, and things like that. And I did a lot of research looking around, seeing if there was any sort of registry of all that. And I could not find it. And then one day I was looking at YouTube, and on the history detectives on their YouTube channel, there was a guy who ended up having a list of vehicles from then and who they were associated with. He even had photos of the actual car with the actual license plate and the registration and all that and the history in them. And I thought, man, that's great. I wonder how he found this information. But then eventually later on in the video, he shares where he found it. And he found it from a book. This book here, the Automobile Guide and List of Registered Cars from 1913. So the lucky thing about this book is it is associated only to West Michigan area. And this one is located at the Library of Michigan down in Lansing. It's in the rare book room. As soon as I found that out, I said, okay, I got a list of all the license plates from everybody that magnet fished and found them. And I said, I'm going to go down there, made an appointment, got down there, and was able to get my hands on it. So that's where I took this photo. And I was able to go through it, and in there was a listing of all the registrations and stuff. Also, this is the only copy known in existence. I've talked to the librarian guy there, and he said they can't find it. They didn't even know it existed till someone, a collector, brought it to their attention. So I'm constantly looking anywhere I go, vintage shops, wherever, for anything like this so that I can bring it to the library and they can keep it on hand. But I ended up getting a digital copy of this. So if we find any more plates, then hopefully, I can find who they belong to. But out of all the plates that we have in our collection, this plate is the only one that we could find registered in the book. The book, there must be a second or third version. This is the first version, which goes from the least amount of numbers on a plate, and then it goes all the way up to 4 numbers, and then it stops. So some of our plates, like this one, would be 5 numbers. You might see them out there, and those would obviously be in another book, but we don't have that book. So I got lucky. Yes?
I have a question. I noticed, my voice isn't Gary. I noticed a gun there.
She's got the mic right there.
I need the mic because we have about
Okay.
15 people watching online. So
All right. I noticed the handgun up there and several handguns out here. I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
What do you have to do to take possession of a handgun? Because there are pretty strict laws in Michigan. You can't just go out and pick one up.
Right.
And secondly, as you find them, did you submit them to the police department to see if they were involved in a crime, perhaps a murder or something?
Yes. So the firearms that we pull out, I've been able to get in contact with Kent County Sheriffs, and I work with a deputy that I contact anytime that I pull out a firearm, and I send him photos of it, and then he goes through and comes up with whether or not I need to turn it in, or whether or not I can keep it, or if I need to register it in my name. The majority of the weapons that I find don't have serial numbers. They're way too old, and basically they're just like, we don't care, we're not concerned, because they're inoperable. They can never be restored to work again. So they're not worried about them. They're like, just keep them, that's fine. There's a couple that I've had to register in my name that still have the serial number, but they couldn't find any information, so never reported stolen or anything. I have never found a weapon that I know that's associated to a crime, but a couple of them I believe are, because usually when they're associated to a crime and you call them and you have the report number and all that and you ask them about it, they're really standoffish and go, we can't give you any information on it, because maybe it's part of an active investigation or whatever it is, because I have found fresh firearms that were probably thrown in like a week ago, So, yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. Most of the times, though, I get to keep them. But this one I actually found, this interesting part about this while I was in Lansing getting ready to go to my appointment for the book, I stopped at a bridge and I was magnet fishing. And this is exactly what I pulled up that day, about an hour before my appointment, a 1913 plate and the revolver. So, and that was actually right in front of the Capitol. So there's like a bridge. I'm not sure what the name of the street, 'cause I'm not familiar with that area, but just down the road. I mean, you could look up and see the Capitol right there. That's a really popular spot for these license plates for some reason. This is just a highlighted part of what the information that I was able to find. Right here is the license plate, and it gives you the names. This book has 100 pages of registered cars, several ads. So here's a few of the ads for the local businesses. It also has a list of rules and the local laws of the roads. It's a total of 192 pages, and then it also has some separate flyers that are inside of it. But this is what I was able to find here, and the name there is Row, West Side, I believe that's what that is, Grand Rapids, and then the address that it was registered to is 119 Northeast Prospect, and it was on a Babecock, I believe I'm saying that right, if anybody knows cars in here. But I believe that's a 1912 vehicle, 1913. That is just a Studebaker, that is not an image of the Babecock. But based off that information, I came back to our local library and I did some research. I looked up the history on that address and to see if I can find any information where Row is associated to that address and see if I could find any photos in the historical archives of it. And so I was able to actually come up with some information on it. This here is 119 Prospect, Northeast Prospect. That's a photo. And then associated with this is this explanation of who William S. Rowe is. And then this is the model car that plate would have been on. And then I was also, after diving into some more information on Mr. Rowe, I was able to find where he was buried and all that information. Death certificate, I got his birth certificate, I have his wedding certificate, I've got all the information that you could imagine about this man. But this is interesting here. I'll read it to you guys. It is known that William S. Rowe, a very distinguished Grand Rapids citizen, lived in this home in the early 1900s. He was president and director of 3 large hotels, namely the Herkimer, the Browning, and the Holding. He served as president and general manager of Valley City Milling Company and director of Michigan Millers Insurance Company. Mr. Rowe was president of the West Michigan Millers Association, president and manager of the East Side Water Company, and vice president of Globe Realty Company. He was director of the Furniture City Realty Company and the Michigan Manufacturers Association. Yeah, and then it gives you the sources and all that. So he was a pretty busy individual in the Grand Rapids area. And actually, when I went to the library and I requested information on him, and I said, you know, this seems to be a pretty prominent person in our city. I feel like, you know, there should be some information on him. And after digging and days, eventually we were able to locate a box that had some information in it. And then the librarian goes, wow, I can't believe how established this man is in the Grand Rapids area and how much he's involved. They're like, we now should probably do more research and bring up more stuff on him, you know, because he's just so well involved in the community back then. So that sparked their interest in William Sherman Rowe. After some more research, I was actually able to find a picture of the gentleman. And I went through the obituary sections because I was able to, you know, locate the time, the date of his death. And so then I said, well, it must be a couple days later that they probably made an obituary in the newspaper. The library has books and books of all the obituaries throughout the years, and you can locate by last number and last name and a bunch of other numbers associated that then lead you to what newspaper, what date, what page it was listed on. So this was the Grand Rapids Herald had listed his obituary there. Yeah, so I got a copy. That's a little more of a closer shot there. Actually, interesting fact is he died, I think he was 42. He passed away of appendicitis. So he was sick for many months with this, and then ultimately he passed away due to it. So, that's something nowadays you go to the hospital, you'll be all right. But back then, they just didn't have that ability.
Any relatives of him are here yet?
No, I haven't been able to locate any living relatives. A lot of, he was married 3 different times, so he's had multiple wives, and then multiple kids, and then it just kind of becomes a jumbled mess after that, and it's just really hard to locate any of his family relatives that are living. I'm sure they're still in the area, but I'm still working on it. I'd love to be able to find a relative that's pretty close and knows who he might be and return the plate to him, because that'd be fascinating. So this gets us to the Coca-Cola sign that you see here. Last year when I was volunteering for the Grand River Mayor's Cleanup, while I was out there, I bring a raft and a bunch of stuff to hold my items and things like that. This is me out in the water by 6th Street Bridge. I was working my way from basically the dam north up to 6th Street Bridge, and when I got to just about 6th Street Bridge, I happened to see this here. So I just seen this little part, this line and some red, and I said, oh, stop sign, This is cool. So I started clearing a bunch of debris, and then it ended up being this sign. Also, while I was cleaning up, I ended up finding this firearm, which I cleared. It was fine. I turned it into Grand Rapids Police Department. They took a hold of it and won't tell me nothing further. So I'm assuming it might be part of something that they're looking into. But it wasn't underwater for very long. This sign, though, took me, the day that I found it, I said, I don't have the rest of the day to dig it out. I'll come back. So the very next Saturday, I made the whole day, told my wife I'm going to be gone all day, and I'm going to focus on only getting this sign out. And I only thought it was just the sign. I didn't realize what it was in its entirety. And so it took me 3 hours underwater to chisel it from the bed of the river. So it was basically encased in like limestone. And so I had to actually chisel it, and it was down at an angle. So you can see the sign here, that's at the surface, and then the rest of it went towards the wall there, down on the angle. So that whole base was buried about 1.5 feet underneath like the limestone. I've been down there so long. So it took a long time to chisel out. It weighs close to 100 pounds. So even after doing that, going through 2 tanks of air, I got it out of the water. It was a nightmare, but I got it. I'm super excited about it. It is a 1920s Coca-Cola lollipop sign, so this is something that they would put outside of their shops and stuff like that. I have yet be able to locate a photo in our area that shows one of these sitting outside of a shop. I've looked through thousands of them. I'm still currently looking for a local photo of them. I can find other photos, but I'm specifically looking for local. Fulton Street Bridge, historical finds here. We have a 1914 license plate that I found underneath there. And then another fun find is the Seward Avenue sign, which I actually have right here. You can hardly make out what it says, but up close, if you really look, you can see it says Seward Northwest Street sign there. And so I started researching to see what year this may have came from. And after looking at a lot of old photos, I was able to only find this Fuller Northeast sign that placed it around 1931 because the font matches and the whole design of it matches that sign. So that's where I'm kind of placing it, probably from 1931. So here's Fulton Street Bridge. This photo was taken in 1926, and this is about glass insulators. So this one here is the only glass insulator that I pulled out magnet fishing because it's still attached to its original iron stake. Otherwise, the rest of them that I find that are like that, and I have tons of them, I find scuba diving, and I always found interesting that there's so many of them down there. But ultimately, it's because when they would redo the bridges, they had a lot of the telephone poles and other poles that had a lot of insulators, and so they would just take them and throw them in the water. That was the normal habit, construction habit back in the 20s and 1800s. If they were redoing anything over the river, that's where you put it. So that's why a lot of this history is down there. This one here is just an interesting thing. This is Leonard Street Bridge, 1930s. So this here's the railroad track that runs north to south. If you're familiar with Leonard Street, that would be facing west, and this picture would be taken on the east side of Leonard Street. But the interesting thing that I wanted to show about this, when I'm scuba diving down there, I see hundreds of these concrete vase-shaped things, and I'm like, man, where are these from? Like, this is just wild, and I think they got to be part of the old construction. I have yet to pull one out because they're really heavy, but they're down there. And so I started doing research on the bridge to see if I could find any photos that might show that structure that I believed they were from, and sure enough, there they are. I was able to find this photo from 1930 that shows these. So another instance of when they're doing construction, they probably just pushed all these down in the water and left them. So there's tons of them down there. We have found off a Leonard Street Bridge as well. We find Toledo torches. I have one here. They're also called smudge pots. So if you're familiar with these were basically your first version of a construction light. You would put these, they would basically fill them with kerosene, light them on fire, and set them along construction zones or whatever they needed them for. I know they were used in railroad tracks, and they were also used in some farms too. But we find a lot of those as well, and I've talked to some people. Actually, the day that I pulled that out, a gentleman came, and whenever I pull something out of the river, I always kind of put it on display, so when people are walking by, they get intrigued and ask me questions. But one of the guys, I couldn't figure out at the time what it was, and he goes, "That's a smudge pot, blah, blah, blah." And I go, "What? What is it?" I thought it was a bomb first, because it's kind of scary looking with this pin. And he says, "No, that used to be, they used to light them on fire and whatever. Me and my friends used to take them and throw them, and they'd fire everywhere and throw them in the water." And so that's how all those ended up in the water. But we come up with tons of them. So that's just a couple ads there of the Toledo torches back then. Leonard Street Bridge finds. So I found World War II dog tags, grenades. We found tank rounds. There's one there. Miscellaneous weapons and parking meters and Coke signs and just all kinds of crazy stuff. So that's a couple pictures there of a pineapple grenade I've pulled up, old iron, asbestos iron, and then this here, which is interesting. These are the World War II dog tags that I found. This is the gentleman that they're associated to. So after going on the news, social media, eventually the World News picked it up. So I did some interviews with the World News. And then through all that, we ended up finding the family that they belong to. And so they sent me over to this picture of Clifford J. Voigt. This here is his son and then his grandson. So his son said that he joined the service at 20 years old, was a communications specialist. He was also among the first units to stumble upon Auschwitz. And then he also survived the landing on D-Day. He left Michigan in 1952, moved to Mesa, Arizona, and passed away in 1995. The interesting thing is the family is all military, Army, Marines, things like that. And so they all have a statue of a soldier that has like a flag. And so they've retired. I mean, he's got a bunch of kids. Clifford had a bunch of kids, so he's got a lot of grandkids and stuff. But they all would take their dog tags when they're done with the service, and they hang them on that flag. The only ones that they're missing was Clifford's, and they never knew where they were. And then here we are, this way later, and here I am, like on the news. Hey, and these belong to him. So I was able to send that back. The news set us up to be able to talk to each other on Zoom. So I got a lot of information and sent those over to them, and now they're hanging where they belong. So it was exciting to get those back. We have railroad switch lamps. I have a version right here. We've pulled out, I think, 3 of these now, and this is one of them from the Grand River. This one was pulled out near Leonard Street Bridge. And then that's a buddy of mine, Zan, that pulled one out. But I was able to find some photos, local photos here. This is Plainfield and Leonard back in 1928, and off in the photo on the side you can see a railroad switch lantern. And these used on tracks so that they can be switched. They commonly had 2 red, 2 green, 4 lenses total, and the operator would jump out and switch the track, and so based on what way that was facing, it would, tell them whether or not the track was left or right or whatever. These were actually filled with kerosene and lit as well, so they were not lit, at least this version, with a bulb or any electricity. And then that gets us into the lollipop sign. So this parking sign here, which I have that same one there, this is a Grand Rapids Police Department, no parking, police order sign. I wasn't even aware of these signs. I had no idea. So after doing some research back in the 1920s, they had these signs all over the place. If you look at photos now from back in the 20s, 30s, you actually see them everywhere in the photos. They actually were so common that there are some, the cards that you would mail out, I forget the name of them, but in the images for Grand Rapids, they would be depicted in paintings and stuff like that from back in the 20s. So, but this one here, I was able to find some signs that were basically similar to this at the City Social Center for transient men back in 1933. And so right here is the sign, and down here is that, and it reads no parking, loading space, police order. And then this is another one, which is Fulton Street, Pere Marquette Railroad, and Pennsylvania Railroad crossing. And here you can see there, which I zoomed in, and here's a gentleman walking next to another one of those lollipop signs. So, yeah, so that's a fun. I found that diving in between Leonard and North Street Bridge on the west wall. It was literally right off the wall where no one can get to magnet fish, and so that's why I was able to find it, because no one was able to magnet fish there. But it was an exciting find. Then this is the old swing bridge there. It's just north or south of Fulton Street Bridge. And there's a lot of history with this bridge. It was built back in 1901 to 1902. The center, which still has all the gears and everything there still, and it's fascinating to see it used to swing so that the steamboats could come upstream. They stopped doing that in 1918 from what I understand, and they stopped using the bridge for the swing part. But it had 2 tracks on it, and then they ended up removing one of the tracks in 1922, I believe it was. And so there I ended up finding these tools, which I have outside. You can see them, these big railroad tools. I found this muzzle loader here, and then I also found a samurai sword as well there. So there's a lot of history underneath that too. Very exciting location to magnet fish and scuba dive. There's a photo of the samurai sword that I pulled up off the bridge there. Let's see, and then we can get into weapons. So weapons found while magnet fishing. This here is just a small image of a few of them that I have. I have a bigger collection at home. So we got this one, and this one here is a 1879 spur trigger revolvers. So those are the oldest ones that I have in my collection. And then you have a bunch of random parts and pieces and full parts there. This one was a sawed-off shotgun, and I found that piece first, and then about half an hour later, I pulled this piece that goes to it up as well. So kind of sometimes you pull pieces out as the day goes on. If you find a piece, usually there's another piece in there associated to it. Here's some more firearms, knives. We find a lot of fishing knives. That was my very first find, and that was off the railroad swing bridge as well. This one here, that was one of my first scuba diving finds, and that was Mossberg 22 hunting rifle, and that was found underneath Wilson Street Bridge by Johnson Park. That's Fulton Street Bridge, and then this is 6th Street Bridge as well. Lots of ammunition that we find there. The pineapple grenade again off Leonard Street Bridge. I found 2 of them. Both of them are decommissioned, so luckily I was able to actually keep them. But I don't bring them to any shows because they kind of make people nervous, even though they're decommissioned. So I try to avoid that. And then here's a tank ground. So my brother-in-law one day was magnet fishing Leonard Street Bridge, and he sends me a text and says, I think I found a tank ground. And I said, no way, that's on my bucket list, you know. And I've been magnet fishing there way longer than him, and he got addicted to it because of me. So there's no way, this is unfair that you found this. And so I got down there, and I confirmed with him, yeah, it's actual tank ground. And so we took some careful, fun photos with it. And then we called the police department. They came down. We had set it off into a parking lot, kind of away from the road, and kind of kept pedestrians away. And then the cops showed up. They shut off the parking lot, and then they had the bomb squad come out. They picked it up. And the gentleman that came back and said, yep, it is a tank round, but it is decommissioned tank round. And, you know, of course, we were like, can we keep it? You know, and he was like, no. And I'm like, well, come on, you know, you're just going to put it on your counter, you know. But he said they have to dispose of it, so that's fine. But that was a World War II tank round. We also have another one that was found off 6th Street Bridge, and that was a Sherman tank round, and that one was actually live. That one was my buddy Ryan had pulled that up. Yes?
So I live on the 6th Street Bridge.
You live on it?
I live on it, yeah.
Like where on it?
Right, I mean, I see my condo
No,
all
I
the
know,
time.
I know what you mean, yeah.
So,
So you've probably seen me out there.
were you the one scuba diving to
Yes.
get the live one?
No.
No.
No, the live one was off of 6th Street, was actually pulled out probably 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was by another magnet fisher.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, we
Yeah,
saw
and
that.
they shut the whole bridge
Yeah.
down for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I see magnet fishermen all the time, but my question is, some of the fishermen leave their stuff. And
Yes.
it bothers me to no end.
It bothers me too. Yeah.
They'll-
So when I first started magnet fishing, I never left piles, and a lot of the people who I got involved with that are serious magnet fishers and really do this for environmental reasons, as I do too, but also for historical finds as you start finding them. We are a tight-knit community, and a lot of the people that leave scrap are people who are just seen the YouTube videos,
Yeah.
heard about it, and say, I want to try it, and they pull up nothing but scrap, and they just leave it because they don't want to deal with it or they don't know how to take care of it. And so we do often go around the areas. If I'm driving around 6th Street, if I'm driving around Leonard Street and I happen to be going by, I will keep an eye open to see if there's any piles, which there are often, and I'll stop and clean them up. I've actually talked with the city as well, because it did become a problem to the point where they were talking about banning magnet fishing in the city. And so that got pretty serious, and we all talked with them and, you know, reiterated that, yeah, you may get some piles here and there, but ultimately, on an environmental stance, this does end up helping a lot more than just the few piles, you know, being dirty. Like if your goal as the city is to clean up the river and make it more accessible and things like that, this helps. Because my first summer of doing it, I know in the form it said 8,000, but it was 18,000 pounds that I was able to pull out of the river of just scrap, and that's just me. There's many other people doing it. And so every year we're pulling out thousands of pounds of material,
That's great, yeah.
you know.
I noticed too that you don't have bikes or scooters. I mean, I see all kinds of them getting pulled out. The
Oh,
Lime
yes.
scooters, and do
Yeah.
you pull those out too? Or?
Yeah, I've pulled out probably over 50 of the Lime scooters easily. My friend, they've pulled out over 1,000 already. They keep track, and that's from here to Lansing. So they're really bad for our environment. Yeah, they're fun and stuff, but ultimately they're dangerous, and they become litter for people who are having fun at night, and they just toss them in the river, you know. And so we pull those out, and then I call the company, And usually they say they come out and pick them up, but most of the times we find it back in the water because they didn't come out and pick it up. Someone just throws it back in. So I've pulled those out, the bikes as well,
there's a
yeah.
Just the last thing I want to say is you're going to have trouble magnet fishing there now because of the construction.
Yeah, I'll be probably scuba diving mostly since because of that, yeah. You're welcome. If you ever see me down there, wave at me.
I know I've seen
You probably have, yeah. Oh, do you? So you got a great spot. That's beautiful. Hi.
Yes, so I was wondering, you know, you fish these same spots over and over again, and at a certain point, you'd think you'd got most of the stuff out, right?
Yeah.
Does the current carry stuff down sometimes, so then you get newer finds? Is that how you?
Right.
you-
Yeah, so we look at it after doing it long enough, you realize it's like a conveyor belt, you know? And a lot of stuff just moves from up current, down current. But it has dramatically changed. So when I first started 6th Street Bridge, you could throw your magnet in there every time and get something out. I mean, it was crazy. We were pulling out so much. It was wild. I mean, we had the news there one day, News 8, and they were doing a story, and they were just blown away about the amount of stuff that we're pulling out. And so people go there. Now if you go there, you throw in, it takes 5, 6 throws to even get something. It's extremely clean now. And so we've made a huge impact over just a few years of magnet fishing in that area. So now actually a lot of the magnet fishers are like, well, great, where am I going to go now, you know? And so they move to Leonard Street. We've cleaned out Leonard Street really good. So now they move up to Ann Street. And so now we're at Wealthy Street Bridge, Fulton Street Bridge. I mean, people are still often at 6th Street Bridge, as you've probably seen a lot still throughout the summer. But you're not pulling out as much stuff because we've cleaned it out so much, so.
The other question I have was, have you done this in other states, or do you think about going to other states?
I would love
other
to.
than Michigan?
I would love to, but I've been to Detroit, Lansing, and Muskegon, but that's it. Other than that, I'm primarily staying in Grand Rapids.
They have this Restore the Rapids project going on here, and are you connected at all with them? Do they ask you to go certain areas to clean it out before they do work there, or how are you connected to them at all?
No, I wish. I'm concerned about it. I really am. Is that? Oh, you gotta. That's my mom, by the way.
The river,
So that's fine. So what were we talking about? The Restore the Rapids. That's right. So with the rapids, luckily now they're not going to destroy the dam itself. That was part of the original plan. Now all they're doing is removing the 4 lower small dams. That's what they're going to do, which I'm happy about because, yeah, the coffer dams, exactly. Because I still have yet to get right up against the 6th Street Dam. That is a plan of mine one of these days when the water gets low enough and it's barely trickling over and I get a group of other people and we all get out there and do it safely. I want to get along that because I know there's a lot of history that's probably pushed up against that dam, the backside. But I do want to look at all the other coffer dams around there because I'm sure there's historical items there too. So that's my plan this summer is to try to get in there as soon as I can before they start the construction. Yeah.
the river is kind of high now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it much easier to do when the river is low?
Yes, yes. Right now, so during the raining season, I really can't dive because the visibility is basically 0. The current's way too strong, it's way too high. Mostly when I dive, it's either really early spring or it's majority of it's fall time when the temperatures start to come down, the sediment starts to drop, you know, the seaweed stuff starts to go away, and then the visibility becomes just amazing. I've been in there when I could see probably 15 feet all directions. It was unbelievable. So, yeah. Yeah.
Does the ice have any factor on what you're finding? Like you've done an area, then the ice comes in next year, and is it a new hunting ground or pretty much picked out yet?
Yeah, so does the ice affect basically certain, yeah, so the ice actually will, sometimes if it gets built up enough, it'll start to on-surface things. Yeah, yep. Oh, yeah, that's a lot of weight, too. People don't understand how strong these currents can be, and they are strong. Yeah, so, and they unearth a lot of amazing stuff. Let's see. Okay, so welding gas cylinders. You would be surprised at how many are in the river. It is a lot. So this was a day where, well, let's go back. This here is a day that me and my other friends there got together. This is just south of Leonard Street on the west wall. And so we were able to gain access to that property with permission, and we spent a day on the weekend, got access to it, and so we magnet fished there. These were just the gas cylinders that we were able to pull up that day. And after learning about how many were right there, I said, let me go scuba dive, And so a couple weeks later, I went back down there, I dove that area, and I counted 24 more left there of various sizes, and I know there's more that I couldn't see. So there's piles of them down there. Yes, it was, yep. And so they must have just, I don't know, either they had a bunch fall in by accident or it was on purpose. We don't know. And people don't like to deal with those because in order to scrap it, you usually have to prove that like it's empty. And if not, then they charge you $5 a cylinder to do it. And I'm too scared to put a hole in it or do anything, so I just go and I pay the $5 and get rid of it because, it's just better to have that than that. This was Muskegon Trash Bash we did, so this is out Muskegon area, and my buddy Zan there pulled up a massive cylinder. And then this is my friend Scooter. She magnet fishes, and this is off of Wealthy Street Bridge. We've pulled up a few gas cylinders there too. So a goal of mine is to get all those gas cylinders that I know are there out of the water, hopefully soon. And then motorcycles and scooters. I found 2 motorcycles, 4 scooters, mopeds, numerous bikes. This is off of Leonard Street Bridge. I ended up finding an old scooter or moped down there. Got a lot of people together, and we were able to get that out of the water. So, and it still had oil and stuff. This is another motorcycle that we found. This is just south of Ann Street Bridge, and me and Scooter, it was just me and her, and it took like 4 hours for us to get this thing out of the water. Drug it up to a parking lot. The police came. They got a tow truck, and they took possession of it. Turned out it was stolen back in the early 90s, but this was like a 70s model dirt bike. And then random finds here. We've got some fun tools there. I find laptops actually all the time, cell phones all the time. I've pulled this lawnmower off of Leonard Street Bridge as well. That was down there. This was under Leonard Street Bridge. We got some old bottles that I found scuba diving. Of course, you got the old pot there, old anchor, and then this here was actually like a work belt that someone must have dropped. It was full of tools. So that was fun to find. And then that's just another picture of during the winter time, the frozen mess of rope for magnet fishing. And that's it for the presentation. So, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone up there, especially Calvin. Thank you for letting me do this. This was great. And then this is just some of the other people, and that's my YouTube channel, Ferris Fishing.
Excellent. Well, we have about 10 minutes yet if
Yeah,
there's
it
more
was good timing.
questions. So, okay, I'll take the questions up in the top, and Wendy can take the bottom.
You said that one insulator cap with the wings was rare.
Yeah, so I've done some research on these, and from what I can find this is called a Mickey Mouse insulator, and these ones are actually pretty rare from what I understand. Anybody know? You look like you agree. No? Okay. Yeah, so this one, it's hard to actually find them intact, too. Usually these pieces are broken, but I found this one kind of dug into the bottom in some sand of the river. So it was kind of exciting when I was doing research. I didn't know what I had found at the time, but yeah, then I found out it was a rare piece.
The limestone that was holding that stop sign, or the Coca-Cola sign, where did all that limestone come from?
It's just part of the original bed of the river, yeah. You know, they used to chip out limestone, and they made some of the buildings around there out of the limestone from the river and different structures downtown.
But why was the limestone holding the sign down?
Oh, it, just over many, many years, it just started to pile over and then seal itself. So a lot of times, like, it's not that it grew over it, it's that it got sealed under it. So you get chunks that kind of float, and then after so long, they start to seal and form together. And so I find a lot of that, it's layers of it just kind of stacked and sealed tight, yeah.
Question about the metal that you recycle. I assume they probably, at the recycle place, know you pretty well? from
Yeah,
driving up.
Pad knows, yep, on Turner, yeah.
Do they, I assume they pay you? I'm surprised to hear they're leaving piles of metal alongside the river. Wouldn't
Yeah.
everybody just kind of bring it there and at least get a few bucks for it?
A lot of people that pick up this hobby don't even know how to recycle metal. You know, they don't know what to do with it, so they just leave it, they don't want to deal with it. It's just, it's kind of ridiculous. Usually what we say is, if you're, instead of just throw it back in the water, because we'll get it back out eventually. You know, like, instead of leaving it here, making the city mad, making residents mad, and making us mad, just toss it back in that little spot, and we'll end up getting it anyway, so. But yeah, I work with Padnos, they're one of my sponsors. Once they found out that I was like there all the time, they're like, what are you doing? Where are you getting this from? And so I talked to them, and then I talked to their like social media person, and so they made me a sponsor, gave me a bunch of stuff, and yeah, so we keep track of and that's how I know that it was 18,000 pounds the first year, is because I have all the forms from all the weights, and we're able to calculate everything each summer that I bring to them.
Good for you.
I was just wondering, through salvage, do you bring in enough money to support your hobby of magnet fishing, or do you have to pull some money from your day job to help out?
Well, there's a tight community that does it, so a lot of us help each other, but for the most part, I don't make enough off scrap to even support this hobby. You know, that's just gas money, really, is what it ends up coming out to be. So this is all out of my pocket. I do Kratos Magnetics as well. They're sponsors, so I've gotten a few magnets from them to help with the effort, but for the most part, it's all me.
Hey, I'm
Yes,
wondering,
Oh, we got two people going.
have you ever followed the Grand River and gone to, say, Ionia or Portland or Grand Ledge or some of the other towns? And also, how deep is the Grand River on the average, or like when it's high? Have you
Okay.
ever thought about having to call a wrecker to get something real heavy out of the river?
I have. I would love to get one of those big industrial magnets. And just, wow, you know.
I would think Ionia would be interesting. I grew up there, but there's you got the Ionia Free Fair, and you got the factory. The A.O. Smith factory used to be near there. They used to make Corvette bodies and stuff like
Yeah.
that years ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of us that go around, a lot of other people that live in like certain areas like that magnet fish as well. I generally stick to Grand Rapids because I'm raised, lived here. I find the stuff so fascinating in my own local area, but I do try to get out to other communities and do it, but for the most part, there's so much here, it's hard to go anywhere else. Yeah.
Hi, you know anything about if you put in at Johnson Park, come up the river, go under the railroad track bridge, now you're coming up on the 96 pilings there, there's pierheads on the west or south side of the river. Do you know anything about it? They're like 3 foot under the water, 2 foot very on the depth
Can you
of the
keep the
water.
microphone by you?
But do you know anything about that, or have you explored that at all?
I haven't explored that, so there's some pier heads that are submerged about 3 foot high. I know exactly what you're talking about underneath the water, and I think it's like north of the I-96. There's one in the middle and some other ones on each end. I have not researched that. Obviously, it's some form of an old bridge, I would imagine. but they're also like hollow too, so I don't know, it's kind of weird. I haven't gotten to that point yet. And then also the deep, I just remembered, so how deep, so when the river's at an average height, it varies from 5 feet all the way down to what I've been able to find, it's 25 feet underneath Leonard Street Bridge and along the wall there. I call that the mini Grand Canyon because they dredged it out at one point, and so you can actually have swam when you get down about 15 feet, and then it's another 10 feet of just limestone wall where they dredge, so I can just swim across alongside of this massive limestone wall for a really long ways. But yeah, so right now it's probably 30, 35 feet right there. There's, yes, most times actually you'd be surprised, you can walk through the river.
So what are some of the more valuable things you've found so far?
I mean, I would say probably the most valuable is the World War II dog tags, you know. Otherwise, everything that I pull out is not really worth much. I mean, if you want to talk about as far as like money-wise, the most valuable, as far as I know, would be the Coke sign. So one of those sold last year for $3,000 in worse shape than this one that I have. So I know that as far as money-wise is valuable. I'm not interested in selling it. I actually want to restore it a little more and just keep it as, you know, a display piece. Maybe one day it'll go to the museum or somewhere where people can actually enjoy it and it's in a safe environment. But yeah, other than that, really, the most valuable things to me in my eyes are personal property. So if I can find personal property that's really valuable to someone, I really enjoy getting that back to them.
I don't think you shared that you also found Vietnam.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I
Shared
did.
that.
So that one, one time when magnet fishing off 6th Street Bridge, I pulled up a chunk of, looked like rock, but usually there's something metal in it if you get it with the magnet. And I cracked it open and there was a set of keys on a ring, and then there was also a Vietnam dog tag associated with that. And so off the information, I was able to find the gentleman that they belonged to, and he lived up in Sparta. So I reached out to him. We made a time and met together, talked for a couple hours. I handed over his keys and his dog tag, and I actually had some slashes on the back of the dog tag. And I was like, I wonder what that's like, how many people he killed, or, you know, like, I don't know, what is it, you know? But no, actually, he says, oh, the markings, I forgot. He said, that's for each month that I was in Vietnam. And then at some point he stopped counting. And I said, oh, okay, good. Yeah, he said he worked in construction and they were restoring the 6th Street Bridge in 1980. And he was on top of it and ended up dropping his keys in the water and never seen it since. So in 2022, here I come, like, hey, I got your keys. So that whole span of time, he just, you know, they've been gone. And now they're in his possession. So, yeah, that was a fascinating story.
Yeah, so those were the 2 dog tags, I think.
Yes, those were the 2, yeah. Only found 2 so far.
All right, I think this might be the last question here.
Yeah, just kind of curious, how did you get involved with wanting to do this magnet fishing?
Just through kayaking and seeing all the stuff down there and wondering how I can get it. And then during COVID, I, you know, picked up the hobby and started going at it. And now I scuba dive, and it's just I slowly, you know, get more and more involved in the hobbies that I pick up. I tend to get more and more involved, just like the pyrotechnician, the fireworks, you know. You start out little and you start advancing more, so I can't help myself.
Well, thank you very, very much. This was fascinating, very interesting, and I appreciate all the time. What maybe you don't know is that he showed up around 10 o'clock this morning already to start setting his stuff up.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate your time.
Yep, you're welcome.